On the first day of unleavened bread, when the Passover lamb is sacrificed, his disciples said unto him, Where do you want us to go and make the preparations for you to eat the Passover? So he sent two of his disciples, saying to them, Go into the city, and a man carrying a jar will meet you. Follow him. And wherever he enters, say to the owner of the house, The teacher asked, Where is the guest room where I may eat the Passover with my disciples? He will show you a large room upstairs, furnished and ready. Make preparations for us there. So the disciples set out and went to the city and found everything as he had told them. And they prepared the Passover meal. When it was evening, he came with the 12. And when they had taken their places and were eating, Jesus said, Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me, one who is eating with me. They began to be distressed, to say to him one after another, Surely not I.
My name is Nathaniel, although some call me Bartholomew. I'm a fisherman, like the others. I was a disciple of John the Baptist, and it was he who first showed me to Jesus in Bethany. I remember my friend Philip coming up to me one day with such joy and anticipation, saying, We found him of whom Moses and the law and prophets wrote. It's Jesus of Nazareth, son of Joseph. I remember the question I posed to him that day, how can anything good come out of Nazareth? I say this not in scorn, but because Nazareth is such an insignificant little place, those of us familiar with her streets and alleys, we wonder why the Lord would put his anointed there. In any case, Philip just said, Come and see, come and see. So I come up to Jesus, and the first thing he says to me is, Behold, an Israelite in whom there is no guile. I said, How do you know me? Jesus said to me, Before Philip called, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. You see, in my country, when working mothers go out to the fields, they lay their babies under the shade of the fig tree. The big leaves shade the babies from the sun. So the master was actually telling me that he had known me since the day I was born. It was then I confessed my faith. Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. And since then, I've served him as a disciple and a chosen apostle. And tonight, when he's instituting a new ceremony that's to replace the Passover, he tells us that one of us is going to betray him. How can that be? How can his betrayer be numbered amongst us, his closest friends? I can't help but ask myself, is it I? Is it I?
Like Zacchaeus, I am a tax collector. Some call me Levi, and others call me Matthew the publican. Through my fellowship with Jesus, my character changed, and my name changed as well. I'll never forget the day that my life changed. I was out in the village collecting taxes, and this man Jesus approached me and said, Follow me. And I put aside my foolish ways and I followed him. I once hosted a dinner in my home for some of my business associates, and Jesus was there. And the Pharisees asked, How can this man, Jesus, socialize with sinners and publicans? And Jesus' response was, Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Since that day that I decided to follow Jesus, Jesus called me to be one of his disciples. I've studied his scriptures closely, studied those scriptures very closely. And I'm more convinced now than ever that Jesus is the Son of God, God's anointed one. I hope one day that I can write down everything that I've witnessed, everything that I've seen, the miracles that he's performed. Because truly, this is good news. This is good news for all the world. But tonight, he has spoken some bad and tragic news. And one of us will betray him. Who could it be? Do I suspect myself? Do they suspect me because I was once a tax collector? Is it I? Is it I?
My name is James. Since a lot of folks, men named James, are larger than me, I'm also called James the Little, or James the Lesser. My father's name is Alphaeus, so I'm also known as the son of James, the son of Alphaeus. I'll never forget the first day that I saw Jesus. I was walking along the road and found where John was baptizing folks. And Jesus was there, and he was wanting John to baptize him. John did not want to, but Jesus insisted. So John did baptize Jesus, and at that time, the Spirit of the Lord came down upon Jesus in the form of a dove, and the sky opened up and a voice from heaven said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." It was about a year into Jesus' ministry that he chose me to be one of his apostles. So at that point, I was with him. I walked with him and talked with him. I stayed with him and prayed with him. I tried to learn as much as I could about Jesus and his Father. And now we learn that one of us may betray Jesus. It is hard to believe. Could this person be bad? I just keep wondering how it could be and who it could be. Is it I? Is it I?
I'm James, brother of John. I followed Jesus with my brother one day, almost 3 years ago, while we were mending our nets by the Sea of Galilee. We were honored when Jesus wanted us to be a part of the disciples, and we were humbled when he chose both of us to be among the 12 apostles. My mother, Salome, was quite ambitious on the matter, and urged us to press our claims upon Jesus. En route to Jerusalem last week, we asked this request of him: "Teacher, grant us to sit one at your right and one at your left and come into your kingdom." He then replied, "Do you not know what you are asking? Are they able to drink from the cup that I am drinking, or be baptized from the waters which I am baptized?" We said, "Lord, we are able." He then told us that we would surely drink from this cup and be baptized with his baptism, but it was not in his power to grant his right left hand in his kingdom. The others were angry when they heard our request. But Jesus then reminded us that he who would be first must be the servant of all. And he demonstrated that by washing our feet just before supper. And now, he who taught us the way of love is to be betrayed by one of those whom he loved. Who would do such a thing? Why would they do this? I just keep thinking to myself, is it I? Is it I?
My name is Andrew. I'm a brother of Simon Peter. I'm not a gifted man. I'm just an ordinary, average man, a fisherman at heart. But I've tried to serve the Master with the gifts and talents that I have. Others call me Andrew the Breeder, for I seem to have a knack of bringing other people to the Lord. I brought my own brother, Peter, to the Lord. It seemed to make his life much happier. I found a young lad with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. That day when Jesus fed the 5,000. I just recently found some Greeks that were looking for the Lord. Again, they were asking me to find them and bring them to Jesus. Jesus must have seen something special in me that others didn't see in me, or he made me one of the 12 apostles. I've been very close to the Master since then. I've not been in the inner circle like Peter, but then I've not been in the outer circle either. I've been a friend and a companion to my Lord. And now, there's a sense of betrayal here in our friends and friends alike. Who could this be? Who could do such a thing with our Lord? Is it me, Andrew? The brand? Is it I? Is it I?
My brother Andrew and I were fishing one afternoon down by the Galilean Sea, just casting our nets out in the water, when Jesus walked by. He looked at us and said, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." So immediately, we dropped our nets and went with him. Then one morning, he came to me and said, "Simon, go out into the deep end and cast your nets out for a catch." I told him, "Master, we have fished all night, haven't caught a thing. But by your word, we will do so." So we went out in the boat, out to the deep end, cast the nets out. Oh my goodness, we caught so many fish. We had to summon some nearby boats to come help us just to bring them back. When we got to the shore, I fell on my knees and cried out, "Lord, depart from me, for I'm a sinful man." He simply said, "From now you will be a fisher of men." He even changed my name from Simon to Peter, which means rock. And then one day, on our way to Caesarea Philippi, and after I had proclaimed him Christ, the Son of the living God, he looked at me and said, "Upon this rock I will build my church." But later, when I protested us going to Jerusalem, where he was to be put to death rebuked me and said, "Get thee behind me, Satan." So you see, I am part good and part evil, part godliness, part devil. Tonight, when he told us that one of us would betray him, I jumped up and shouted, "Lord, I will defend you even unto death." But he warned me, before the cock crowed, I would deny him 3 times. The other disciples, they call me the big bishop. But next to him, I just feel small and unworthy. Do I really deny him before the rooster crows? And if I do, will he deny me? Or disown me? Or keep me from the gates of his kingdom? If I knew who the traitor was, I'd stab him in the heart with my knife. But yet, it may be my own heart that I'll stab. God, please let it not be so. And yet, I can't help but wonder, is it I? Or is it I?
My name is Philip from Bethany in Galilee. While my friends and I were in Bethany listening to John the Baptist, he asked us to be his disciples. And we turned and we followed him. I remember oh so well before he fed 5,000 with 5 loaves, with 5 fish and 2 loaves. I remember asking him and others, where are we to buy food so that all of these may eat? But little did I know that Andrew was already on his way back with a young lad and his lunch to give to Jesus. When the Greek soldiers came to have an interview with the Father, I directed him to Andrew, and Andrew brought him to Jesus. When Jesus began to tell us that God is our Heavenly Father, it was beyond my understanding. But as I listened to him speak, I began to understand his words. In fact, he who has seen Jesus has seen God. Because everything I would want to find in God, I find in Jesus. And nothing that I would not want to find in God, do I find in his Son. And after seeing the Father through him, he shocks us and tells us that there is a betrayer in our midst. Does one not understand that in betraying Jesus, you are betraying God? And that conspiring against Jesus, you are conspiring against God? Could one of our members be so blind? Who could it be? Is it I? Is it Philip? Is it I?
I am Thaddeus, one of the disciples whom Jesus chose to be an apostle. Jesus chose the 12 of us to be the cornerstones of the new kingdom, just as the 12 tribes were the cornerstones of the old Jewish kingdom. I remember the day well. After a night of prayer, Jesus called us to him and gave us authority over unclean spirits and the power to heal every disease and infirmity. Then he commissioned us to go forth and preach that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. But he told us to be as wise as serpents, but as innocent as doves, because he was sending us forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. It is enough, he said, that the disciple be like his teacher, and the servant as his master. I was in Jerusalem when he gave the great invitation. Come unto me, all ye who labor and are heavy laden, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And now, he who came to share men's burdens has a burden thrust upon him, the knowledge that one of us will betray him. Who could it be? Is it the man we least suspect? Or will all of us betray him at the end of the night? Philip and Peter and Judas and John and even Thaddeus? Is it I? Is it I?
I'm Thomas, twin. While I do not look at life with gloom and despondency, I usually demand proof before I believe. I want to see before committing myself. Yet I am not a man of doubt. Rather, sometimes I feel I'm a man of daring. I remember the day when Mary and Martha sent word to the Lord that their brother Lazarus was dead. He turned to us and he said, "Let us go to him." We knew of the growing opposition to Jesus. Some of the other disciples didn't want to go. They were afraid of the unseen danger. Yet I remember how I spoke out. I rebuked them all by saying, "Let us also go with him, that we may die with him." Why do people remember my doubts and forget my daring? They remember the questions and they forget my affirmations. They remember my fear and forget my faith. They used to go fishing with some of the others. Oh, how well I remember the Beatitudes he spoke of on the horns of heaven, the first year of his public ministry. I can almost see him rebuking the winds of the stormy Galilee, healing the sick, curing the diseased. He made the blind to see, the deaf to hear. He cleanses the lepers and he preaches the gospel to the poor. Now, there's opposition, and his enemies want to destroy him. Now he says that even among us, the chosen 12, there's a traitor. Is he speaking of me? He couldn't be referring to me. Or is it I? Is it I?
I'm John. One day we were out with my brother James, with our father, mending our nets. When Jesus called us to follow him, we immediately left what we were doing to follow him. Since then, I've tried to understand Jesus. I love him. Yet, I love him as a person. I think he's as much God as humanly possible. I have shared his trials and his victories. Pierre and I complete the arrangements for the celebration of Passover here in the upper room tonight. Because he numbers us within his inner circle. He told me about his talk with Nicodemus when he spoke those wonderful words, "For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life." Someday, I wish to share his wonderful deeds, so others may read them and believe that he is the Son of God, and that believing they may have life in his name. Yet, he says there's a betrayer among us. It can't be Andrew or Peter. Could it be John, the beloved disciple? Is it I? Is it I?
I'm Simon the Zealot, or Simon Zelotes. Before Jesus called me, I belonged to a group of hot-headed, bloodthirsty revolutionaries known as the Zealots. We were for an armed rebellion against Rome. We believed in crushing our enemies under their heels and restoring the ancient glory that was Israel's back in the days of David and Solomon. But Jesus tells us of another kind of kingdom, the kingdom of the human heart, where God reigns supremely. He teaches us that the conquest of the heart is the only true and lasting conquest. Since I've heard this, I've changed my mind, and also my allegiance. I have unconditionally and completely surrendered myself to him, to think his thoughts, to love as he loves and whom he loves, to obey as he obeys, to serve as he serves. Yet this surrender has not imprisoned me. It has set me free. That for the first time in my life, I am no longer afraid of Rome. Rome is mighty, but God is almighty. Now the Master says there's a spiritual Roman amongst us, one who would attempt by force what can only be conquered through love. Who could that be? Matthew the publican? The big fisherman? His brother? Or does he suspect me, the only former zealot amongst us? Is it I? Is it I?
All of my brother disciples are from Galilee. I am the only Judean here. I am Judas Iscariot. And there has been some friction between my brothers and I. Perhaps it's because of coming from different areas. And yet I've heard stories. Although I was selected by Jesus himself to be one of his 12, and the disciples themselves selected me to hold the common verse, there have been stories that I took from that verse for my own benefit. Undoubtedly, the only person to hold a common verse who ever did so. They've even said that recently I consulted with the chief priests and received 30 pieces of silver for a task not named. Well, that is my business. In all the years I was a servant of Jesus, I did what I could. No one was ever able to say that I did not preach, teach, or heal in the name of the Master, as my brothers did. I believe him to be the Son of God. I believe he will bring Israel into power as God's nation on earth. And yet, what has he done over these 3 years? He has talked to Samaritans and gave them the benefit of love. All right, in every war there have to be some to die at the front. Let it be the Samaritans. He has spoken favorably of people of Rome. There can be no forgiveness for Rome. So, the time will come, whether he wants it to or not, for him to call down armies of angels, for him to destroy Rome forever, for him to bring Israel into its power, for him to become the Messiah we have so long awaited. And who am I to bring this about? I'm one who still believes in my Master, but I prod him as a servant must. I made reference earlier to being betrayed. I suppose you could call it that. Well, I suppose my brothers with their long faces have been asking themselves the same thing. Is it I? Is it I?